Hello everyone, and you are watching my channel Creative Design Lab. And today I'm going to teach you or tell you basically about what is a gradient and how is it made actually. So before we start off with how to make a gradient, I will just tell you about what a gradient is basic. So for example, if I talk about colors, so if you take one black color, you take one white color, and if you try to mix that color, you would get a result something which is of a gray shade. Now we'll move forward with how to make a gradient basically, and we'll know about the attributes and the types of gradients. So for understanding it in a much better way, I'll be using Adobe Photoshop to make you understand what a gradient is. Okay, so let's get started. So what I'll be doing is first, so I'll take a new layer from here, and I'll be going to this particular marquee tool, or yeah, fine. So what I'll do is I'll just make two little shapes for you people to understand. So I'll just take a red color and fill this up, right? Fine, so this is the thing. Now what I'll do is I'll just make a new color range, and I'll fill it with a little blue color, and go to the bucket tool and fill this up. Fine, so we have taken up two boxes, one of the red and the one of the blue, and so let's say if I try to mix up these both the colors, right? So let's see what color will be getting it up. So what I'll do is I'll just bring in this particular thing here, so for you people to understand. So I've already given you an example of a black and a white mixing and giving us an gray shade, right? So for this we just choose up which shade will it give, right? So if we mix let's say if we mix your red with your blue color, right? So what will it give, right? So let's take up a half page of this, right? So what I'll do is I'll just bring this up here, great, and then a copy of this. So we will just put this up here to this blue, right? Let's see. So once you mix these two, it more or less will give you a color which will be the middle color of it, right? So let us go to this particular blue shade, right? If you see the range here, just see. So this is the extreme red which we have taken, right? And then we go to the blue part. This is the one, the blue part. Now if we mix both colors, right? So if you see this middle part here, this says about this particular color, let's say, so the pink one, right? Now if I have to tell you that what a gradient is, so I'll just tell you this. Once I press OK, I'll just go and show you. So I guess this is the thing. So this is the color, the middle color it would have. So basically a gradient is a mixture of two colors, so red mixing up with blue, giving you a middle color that will be pink. Now if you mix these colors, right, so again you'll have one middle color here and then one middle color here, right? So I'll show you what middle colors will you get. So again I go on to this particular shade. Now if I go on to the, if I have to see the gradient of these, so red and the pink, you'll find this middle color, right? Once I press OK and I go and show it to you, so see, this is how gradient works, see. So I'll just put this up so that it is easy for you to understand the range of the gradient, right? So if you see, now I'll go back to this color and go to this, and I'll take pink and this blue middle part. So I go to this, I'll click here, I'll go to the blue part and color this up, and I hope now you will be able to understand very easily that what basically a gradient is. See, so it is not only mixing of two colors. A gradient can be many colors into one particular range, right? So I hope it is very clear to you what a gradient is. Now what I will be doing is I'll be now getting back to the next part of what a gradient is and how it is made, right? So what I'll do is I'll just take up one particular blank. So I'll just make one particular box for you to understand here, just a box, and I'll fill it with a color. Right now, Control D. Also deselect. It's an option in Photoshop to deselect. So this is the box which I have. Now I just have to fill in a gradient, right? So the option is here in the paint bucket tool. When you right click on your mouse, you'll find the option gradient, right? So once you go ahead with the gradient, you will have an option open up here. So if you see on the top, you'll have this option of gradient. If you want to edit it, or you want, let's say you want to change, so now we are talking about how to make a gradient, right? So you just have to click on this, double click on it, you'll find an option here, right? So you'll have all the options here. If you click on these drop downs, you'll have all the predefined presets of shades. Every shades you'll find. So if I click here, see, so if I've clicked here, I have the gradient, right? So let's now understand how to make a gradient first, and then I'll go with the attributes of how to make a gradient, and obviously the types at the last, right? Now let's begin. So at the first, please understand this particular part. This is basically your color bucket, right? So if you see, this has the orange color and this has the yellow color, right? So this is a one gradient mixing two colors and forming a gradient. So if you see this lighter part, it has one tone of orangish yellow. Okay, fine. So I hope this much is understood, and then now let's move to the next part. So how to actually fill up the gradient. So basically, if I go on to the gradient, right? So if I click on OK and I go on to the gradient, and if I select this, I can fill up the gradient, right? So I take from point A to point B. Sorry, I just need to select it, I guess. Yeah, so I'll just select it and I'll go on to this and I'll go to the gradient from point A to point B. Can you see this is how the gradient is filled, right? Okay, so how to change the gradient? So I'll go back to this tool, I'll double click on the gradient again. Now let's say I want this part to be in some other color. So you just have to click on this, one click, and you'll find an option of color. So after this option, you just have to click on this color, you'll find this particular web color options. And you can choose any color you want to. So whatever color you will choose, it will appear here. So if you go and choose on blue, it will appear here. Choose green, it will appear here, right? You choose yellow, orange, anything, any color you choose, it will appear here, right? Now if you put OK, once you put OK, this color is here, right? This color is pretty easily seen. Now let us move to this part. So the location is 0, obviously. So if you put 10, what happens? Your particular color bucket moves, right? So it will tell that your color will start from here, location. So we'll put back it to 0. Now the next part is that how to add more stops to it or more paint buckets to it. So you just have to left click on your mouse and you can add a bucket here. So if you see, you can add multiple colors. Just click and you can add multiple colors. You just have to add. Now how to remove a color? You just have to drag it down. Hold from your left click and drag down. You can adjust it by clicking on it. You can really adjust the color range from wherever you want, the location where you want the bucket to be. Now moving further. Now if you see this little cursor here, this little square box, this is basically for adjusting your color range. So if you see, it actually adjusts your color. I'll just take one more color so that you understand. So I'll just take up some other color here. Let's say a blue color to make you understand. So if I bring it near to it, so if you see this part, it is getting more stronger, right? So the mixing is getting less. This is how you can adjust the color range with this little cursor. Now in the entire thing, what is the use of this particular thing, this particular box over? So this particular box is actually used for creating the opacity. Now opacity is basically something which is related to transparency of anything. If you decrease this, so let's say if you decrease the transparency, right? So if you go on to this, and if I say, let's say it will be 20%. So if you see here, the transparency has decreased. You can add more stops and you can just arrange it to 100. See, so the transparency is there. Okay, great. So this is all about the transparency. Now if I go on to the gradient type, so it talks about solid, it talks about noise. So once you click on noise, you'll find a lot of options to choose from. Generally we work on with the solids only. Okay, so I'll just move on to this and keep it to 100. Great. I'll just change the color so that it becomes easy. Fine. Now this is how we can actually add and subtract the color from this particular gradient range, right? Now if you want to make your own gradient, let's say I want to make my own gradient, I just have to click OK on this. I just have to click here, remove this with backspace and just write. So let's say I write demo gradient, and if I click on this new, see the gradient is added here. This is how you can add gradient. Okay, now so we have understood how to make the gradient. We are now going to actually make this particular gradient which is there on the top. So what I'll do is I'll go to the gradient part, and what I will be doing is I'll just take up the thing. So we have how many pickers? 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So I'll just add one more here. I'll remove this. So basically this will be 25, 50 and 75. Fine. So okay, great. And now what I'll do is I'll just go on to this, go to this and just take up this color picker and select the color and press OK. Now again I'll go to this, take up this color picker and press OK. Oh, just have to do it again. Then take up this color, go to the color picker, take up this color, press OK. Go to this color, take up this color, press OK. Go to this and I'll just take up this color. Okay, fine. This is done. I'll press OK. If you see this part which was similar to something, so I'll just show you the color range also. Okay, so I'll just go to this, go to this. Now if you see this part here, it starts from the red, goes to the blue, it starts from the red, goes to the blue. See, this part and this part is the same. This is how the gradient is formed. So if you see on the top we have the gradient. What I will be doing is now I'll give you an example of how this gradient works. Go to the selection tool, and what I will be doing is I'll now go to the gradient and put the gradient from this to this. So see, now here if you see it's a hard edge, here if you see it's a mix, and this is how the gradient is formed. Now if you see this part on the screen, basically talks about your linear gradient. So there are types of gradients which you can work upon. So if I click on the gradient, you can see on the top, so this is the linear gradient, this is the radial gradient, this is your angle gradient, this is your reflected gradient, and this is your diamond gradient. So I'll be showing you some of them. So now let's start with the first gradient. So what I'll do is I'll go and select this part. I will be going to the radial gradient and the same thing. So I'll just go and do this. You can go till the end. So can you see this is how the radial gradient works? I'll just show you one more aspect of radial gradients. I'll just keep it to midway. Okay, see, this is how the radial gradient works. I'll move on to the second part. It talks about your angle gradient. So let's see what angle gradient has for us. So this is basically a little hard edge stuff. See, so you'll find angles to the gradient. Let's move on to the next gradient. Okay, so this is your reflected gradient. It is basically same as your linear gradient. It seems to be same as your linear gradient. Okay, so now let's move on to the last gradient, which is your diamond gradient, and go and fill up this. So if you see, this is how the diamond is formed. I'll go to a little more extent. See, this is the diamond gradient. So we have the linear gradient, radial gradient, you have the angular gradient, you have the reflected gradient, and you have the diamond gradient. Okay everyone, I hope you have enjoyed seeing how gradient works and how you can make amazing gradients. I'll be talking about more of the attributes of the gradient in the next video, and I'll tell you how you can even arrange your gradients into amazing shapes and forms. I hope you have liked the video, and I would really want you people to try out this gradient stuff. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.